Despite being beloved by many and having reliability and dependability backing up the brand over the past 10 years, Mazda is seen as a niche manufacturer. A manufacturer that can't compete directly to the Nissans, Hondas, Toyotas, and Fords of the world when it comes to sales volume, but most certainly when it comes to the products they sell, some might say they're superior in terms of interior quality, the driving dynamics, even the overall value when you take a look at the pricing. Well, things might change here in 2026 with the all-new CX-5, a crossover that's now designed and engineered to be a mainstream competitor that can give Nissan, Toyota, Honda, and Ford some nightmares. And with this model, this vehicle is more tech-focused. It's bigger and maybe even better than before. And in today's video, we're going to check out what the 2026 Mazda CX-5 has to offer us here and see why, for 2026, right now, this CX-5 is perfect for American families. Now, before I dive into this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Ira Mazda here in Westwood, Massachusetts, for inviting me down here to check out the new CX-5. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Mazda inventory. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For the 2026 Mazda CX-5 we're taking a look at today, this is the Premium Plus, the top trim for this model year, coming in just below $40,000. Pretty impressive here pricing-wise. One thing I have noticed taking a look at all the trims today is that the pricing is a bit more condensed, where you can get a lot of value out of a Preferred, out of a Premium, maybe even a Select as well, and you don't necessarily have to go with the top model like we're taking a look at today, but we might as well check out what this vehicle is offering from top to bottom, because at 40 grand, this just might be one of the more upscale models in this class. Now, the first thing we got to talk about is the fact this model is much bigger than last generation. In fact, it's about 4.5 inches longer than the outgoing CX-5, making this a bit more practical, a bit more family friendly. However, even with the size increase, it's still one of the smaller crossovers in this class, believe it or not. So there's no overlapping here compared to the CX-50. What I will say, though, is that with this upsize, you also have a vehicle that looks a bit more grand, and with the aesthetics for this generation, I think very, very streamlined and definitely draws your attention here. So up front, you are going to receive full LED headlights and LED daytime running lights in a very similar design to the outgoing generation. Now, with this being a Premium Plus, this lighting system is adaptive, giving you better visibility at night or in adverse weather conditions. Now, for the front fascia itself, the center portion, one thing that Mazda did change here is the design a bit, where this is no longer gloss black, so you don't have that shine anymore. And then the trim piece that outlines it is not chrome. It's more of a brushed aluminum accent. We're seeing a lot of this now in the automotive industry. Then for the lower portion of the front bumper, here we have the gloss black. The nice gloss black trim here for the front bumper, giving you more of an upscale appearance. So you're not going to be going off-road with the Premium Plus, at least for 2026. Now, as you make your way over to the side profile, here we have the gloss black trim once again, continuing on for the wheel arches. This has become very popular in this class. A lot of vehicles at around $40,000 now offer this, and the gloss black extends to the side rails as well. So you're going to have more of this sleek and upscale appearance here. Now, with the Premium Plus, you are going to receive 19-inch alloy wheels in a gloss black finish. I do wish we could get a different wheel design here for this trim, because gloss black kind of makes this model look a bit sporty when some people might be looking for a more upscale vehicle at around 40 grand. Now, matching that will be gloss black side mirror caps with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety, and also gloss black roof rails. Then making our way around to the back here with the CX-5, it does have some styling elements similar to the CX-70 and CX-90, especially with the LED taillights. So it makes its way into the center portion of the liftgate, very classy. Also, the Mazda badge being written out on the liftgate itself. That's very common now in this market. For the lower portion of the rear bumper, here we have some gloss black trim, obviously giving us some symmetry to the overall look of this vehicle, but some plastic cladding for the rear diffuser However, best of all, you still had the 2 visible exhaust outlets, giving the CX-5 somewhat of a sporty appearance here. But let me know what you think about the new CX-5. I really like it. I like the fact that the C-pillar is a bit more aggressive, a bit wider here, making it look somewhat boxy, but also a bit more practical as well. So it's setting that tone where the new CX-5 is going to be family friendly and not so much this smaller compact crossover that couldn't compete with the bigger vehicles in this class. But let me know what you think. I really like this new CX-5. I think it looks really nice here for 2026. Powering this all-new CX-5 is a familiar sight. In fact, the same engine from last generation. It's going to be a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, producing 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. And just like we saw last year, it is paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission, unlike what we see from Nissan and Subaru in this class where they offer CVT. So I think a lot of you are going to like that here. Unfortunately, though, for this generation, there is no word of a turbo model coming anytime soon. In fact, we might not even see that for this generation, as Mazda claims 90% of their buyers purchased a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. So if you're waiting for more power, or you want more power, maybe even better fuel efficiency, hold off for the hybrid model coming sometime down the road. It might be next year that we get the hybrid model, so keep that in mind here. Now, also with the CX-5, and this is huge for those of you who do live up here in New England and in colder regions of the U.S., all-wheel drive does come standards. That's put into the price tag right there. So I think a lot of you are going to be happy about that. Also, when you take a look at fuel efficiency, you're looking at right on 24 miles per gallon in the city and 30 miles per gallon on the highway. Not class leading, but again, a hybrid model is coming down the road. So if you want better fuel efficiency, hold off for that model and that trim. But honestly, right here with this powertrain, it shouldn't feel any different than last generation. But during that test drive, we're going to find out to make sure. Then hopping inside the all-new CX-5, this is pretty ambitious for the brand, right? Like considering where we were last generation, where Mazda was not eager to throw in a large touchscreen. They were not eager to move away from physical buttons and dials. And in fact, a lot of critics would say that the Mazda CX-5 couldn't compete directly with its closest rivals. So what did they do this time around? They upsized it, making it more practical, more family friendly. We're going to find that out when we check out the second row and the cargo space. They've also, I think, made it look a bit more luxurious for the exterior. And then for the interior, all right, we got to address the one elephant in the room. Hard touch plastics on the door panels, on the dashboard, and the center console. However, by doing this, they're able to focus primarily on the things that a lot of buyers right now are liking, right? They like technology. They want a full digital gauge cluster. They want a touchscreen. And there are some people who want to push back on that. They want smaller screens. But what we have here at the top level for the Mazda CX-5 for 2026 is most certainly in line with its closest rivals. And I think that on paper is a much more formidable foe, comparing it to a Honda CR-V, comparing it to a Toyota RAV4, and obviously the new Volkswagen Tiguan, the Hyundai Tucson, etc. So let's dive into what we have here for this trim. So up front, you're going to receive power adjustable heated and ventilated leather trim seats for both the driver and passenger. One thing that has not changed from last generation, Mazda did not sacrifice, is the comfort of these seats. They're plush, they're supportive, they're very well cushioned. Now, okay, the bolstering isn't aggressive, but the CX-5 isn't a sports tune crossover. So on those longer drives, on those longer weekday commutes, you're going to find yourself pretty comfortable here in the new CX-5. Also carrying over from last generation is the premium feel of the steering wheel. So it is leather wrapped. It's also heated as well. Aggressive 10 and 2 and firm 9 and 3 grips. There will be paddle shifters here with the Premium Plus to rotate the gears yourself. Now, before we dive into this digital gauge cluster, there is one thing that is a bit of a surprise here for this vehicle. You don't typically find this in a crossover in this class that also has no physical buttons and dials. And that is, you have the drive mode selector on the steering wheel. So most vehicles would have it on the center console. But also, interestingly enough, is your camera button here on the steering wheel. So that way you have easy access to seeing what's around you if you are parking on a city street or in a small garage. Very surprising. You don't see that. Then obviously, of course, you're going to find your cruise control settings and your lane centering on the steering wheel as well. Very straightforward. On the left side, you're going to have the icon that helps you control that digital gauge cluster in front of you. And I gotta say, resolution and quality and the way it's laid out reminds me a lot of BMW's digital gauge clusters from 2018 and 2019. And that is not a bad thing here, because I like the simplicity of it. I like the fact that it's not super in-depth. I also like the fact that the way it's positioned. The sun glare isn't going to be too much of a problem, neither is the reflections. So Mazda most certainly learned from BMW on that one. Then making our way over to the infotainment system, this is the big talking point. This is what has everyone up in arms right now, because they're complaining about this almost 16-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility. It also has Android-based software, so we have onboard navigation powered by Google Maps, and we also have the Bose audio system to amplify the audio of your favorite music. Now, I want to start off by saying that yes, I do miss having the dial on the center console, giving us dual functionality. Sometimes I don't want to reach for the screen. However, and this is going to be somewhat controversial on my end, because I haven't been a big fan of technology lately, this screen, this software, isn't difficult to get used to if you are acclimated with Android-based software. So if you have experienced a brand new BMW, brand new Audi, brand new Ford, this isn't going to be too much of a learning curve. In fact, it's almost laid out the exact same way. At the bottom of the screen will be quick access icons for your dual zone climate control, your AC, front rear defrosters, fan speed, fan direction, your heated steering wheel, and heated and ventilated front seats. Very straightforward, right? We see this a lot now in this market. You're also going to have icons for your vehicle settings, your home screen, your navigation, your radio, and then you have your widgets here, which again, it throws me back to what we have with BMW's iDrive 8 software, what we have from Audi, what we have from Ford. And from here, all your widgets will be in place for AM, FM, obviously, your Google Assistant, Google Maps, your maintenance, your NG monitor, which will be probably useful when we have the hybrid model coming very soon. We have Sirius XM, and yes, YouTube. Now, I do want to dive into the vehicle settings though, because I think this is pretty cool. So you do have your drive mode selector here, so you don't have to use the buttons on the steering wheel if you don't want to. You have sport, normal, and off-road. Your hill descent control. You also have traction control on and off. All this is now on the screen. Some people don't like it. I fully understand that. Also, you have your safety systems as well. Right here, well within arm's reach, you can turn them on or off for added assurance and peace of mind on those longer road trips or when you are dropping the kids off at school. Then you have your driving position. So you can adjust your seats from this infotainment system, which isn't new. It isn't unique in this class, but you can definitely tell that Mazda is moving in this tech-focused direction. We're going to spend probably 20-30 minutes on this touchscreen alone, and I'll probably do that sometime later on in the year to get you guys acclimated with the screen if you are really seriously interested in the new CX-5. Now, of course, when you do place the CX-5 in reverse, you have a rear backup camera with trajectory, a top view camera as well, but then when you place it in drive, you're going to have a front-facing camera with trajectory and side views. So you're going to have plenty of visibility here when you are in the city or when you are parking in a garage. Continuing on, beneath the head unit, you're going to find two buttons here for your max AC for your front and rear defrosters. Then for the center console itself, no gloss black trim. So Mazda listened here. There's no gloss black. This will be easier to clean and maintain throughout the years of ownership. You have two cup holders here, your gear shifter, traditional, electronic parking brake, auto vehicle hold, your wireless phone charging pad, and then you will have a center storage compartment, which is deep enough for some smaller items, maybe a couple wallets, smartphones, or other tech gadgets. There'll be two USB-C inputs as well here. And then to round out the front seating area, above will be a panoramic moonroof, which brings in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now, making our way to the second row, this is where there's been a huge upgrade. And that's going to be the interior dimensions. You're looking at right around 40 inches of legroom here with the 2026 CX-5. Because you now have a length of about 184 inches. It's about 4 inches more than last generation. It's a lot more space. What was one of the things that people did not like about the CX-5? It was small. It was cramped. It was not as family friendly. It was not as practical. You can't say that here about this new generation. So to put everything into perspective, close to 40 inches of legroom is on par with the Volkswagen Tiguan. It's on par with the Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, Kia Sportage, and the Hyundai Tucson. And you notice that immediately. There's a lot of legroom here where I can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the driving experience. Also, a higher roof line now for this generation, giving us more headroom. So tall passengers can sit back here relatively comfortably. What I also noticed too is that with the CX-5, it's wider, so you can accommodate a third person in the center. Everything Mazda did Yes, okay, they got rid of the softer touch materials on the dashboard and door panels. But everything Mazda did here was to make the CX-5 a more family-friendly vehicle for the American market. And we're really seeing that shine through here, taking a look at the second row seating area. And it's probably even better for the cargo space as well. Now, for the Premium Plus, you are going to receive heated outboard seats, which is going to be very nice during the colder months. And you will have 2 USB-C inputs. Then to round out the second row seating area, you're going to receive a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Then returning to the rear fascia to take a look at the cargo area for the 2026 CX-5. Obviously, with this being a Premium Plus, you are going to receive a power liftgate. It's also hands-free for this trim, for those of you wondering about that feature. And inside behind the second row seats, you're looking at right on 33 cubic feet of room, which is a huge improvement over the outgoing generation CX-5. What was one of the criticisms for that model? It was too small. It was too cramped. It was smaller than all of its rivals. Well, you can't say that anymore with the 2026 model, because at 33 cubic feet of room, that's on par with the Subaru Forester, Subaru Outback, Volkswagen Tiguan, Nissan Rogue, Ford Escape, and Ford Bronco Sport. So if practicality held you back a couple of years ago when you were looking at buying a CX-5, that is no longer an excuse here. So this is going to be perfect if you do have a growing family, and you can easily store 8, 9, 10 bags of luggage back here. On both sides of the rear cargo area will be some cubbies for some smaller items, maybe a couple water bottles, car detail equipment, or maybe even a first aid kit. Then beneath the floor mat, you are going to find a spare tire. So if you encounter a flat on those road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. Also found on both sides of the cargo area will be some latches to conveniently lower the second row seats. And when they are lowered, you're looking at right around 66 cubic feet of room, which isn't going to be class leading, just to keep that in mind here, but it is better than the old CX-5. So in the past, you were forced to go in the CX-50 direction, which then you were sacrificing on-road comfort, maybe even interior comfort as well with that model, just to get a bigger crossover. Whereas with this new generation CX-5, this is going to be perfect for growing families, but also if you're looking for a compact crossover in this price range, this is going to be an ideal choice now for 2026. So setting off on the all-new 2026 Mazda CX-5, we got to begin on some winding back roads. We got to experience what the handling dynamics are like, and if this still is an agile and athletic crossover in its class at around $40,000. I am currently in sport mode, as you do here. And one thing I'm going to say is that with this 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, it is no slouch. All I've heard is that, oh, the CX-5 is slow. But comparing this to a Subaru Forester or Subaru Outback that has a CVT and a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, I feel like the Mazda CX-5 is just a bit more peppy. This engine is very responsive. Now in the corners, you're going to notice some body roll here. And you're going to notice that the size definitely comes into play. It doesn't feel as maneuverable as it did before. And with the steering input, it's not as stiff and as weighted as it used to be. Well, it's not vague and it's not light. It's not as athletic as it was. It's not as engaging as it was before. Now, on this back road, the suspension can handle them pretty well. And you do feel some sense of connectivity. So this hasn't been a passive driving experience so far, but a different experience that you wouldn't associate with Mazda. Comparing this to a CX-30, CX-50, CX-70, CX-90, this feels like a completely different product. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet. Because as you've discussed so far throughout this entire review, everything Mazda has done for the 2026 model is to draw in a wider consumer demographic, a demographic that maybe would have purchased a Honda or Toyota in the past, that would have overlooked the CX-5. And where the CX-5 has improved is with the practicality, with the interior space, with a vehicle that now feels more family friendly, more suitable. at its price point where you're not going to be overlooking 33 cubic feet of room. You're not going to be overlooking 40 inches of second row seating area. But I think all of that comes at the expense of the driving experience. Sure, it's not going to be a boring crossover by any stretch of the imagination. It's not going to feel large or cumbersome. And because the seat positioning for this generation, much like the last CX-5, you feel a bit more planted and you feel a bit more attached to the chassis than a lot of vehicles in this class that make you feel as though you're sitting on top of the vehicle rather than being a part of it. And with the CX-5, Mazda did not sacrifice that at all. I will say, despite the changes, despite the mechanical changes that Mazda has made here, it still keeps you on edge. It still keeps you locked in. Now, also when it pertains to the interior insulation, it's actually pretty quiet. It's surprisingly quiet here for a vehicle at around $40,000. Now, most of your noise is going to come from the 19-inch alloys, which maybe that can be addressed if you throw on some Michelins, which that would be my recommendation. I'm not sponsored by them, but Michelins will be the way to go if you want a bit more of a quieter experience. Also, when it pertains to the overall vision, nice panoramic view. A-pillars are not as aggressive as they were before, so you might not have any blind spots when you are approaching intersections or red lights. Taking a look at your side mirrors, they are decently sized. I can't see what's in my blind spots and in the lane next to me. And then looking out back, nice clear view. So they did address those weak points from last generation. I will say that Mazda has done a pretty good job of masking the bigger size to this generation. That yes, you do feel that weight transfer, you might be rolling a bit in these seats, but you're still gonna have the confidence to take on the sharp corners and bends on a winding back road. It's just that it's not as dynamic as it used to be. And maybe, just maybe, if they threw in a turbo, that'd be a bit of a different story. But from my memory and my recollections of the last generation CX-5, even for the naturally aspirated version, the steering input was much stiffer than this. So as we loop back, I'm going to place it in normal mode and see what it's like just cruising around. On throttle, you hear the 2.5 liter four-cylinder engine. It is quite noticeable, but off throttle, it's docile and muted. What I also like too is that with the 6-speed automatic, for one, it's predictable and it's not hunting for gears. So much like we saw last generation, it has similar DNA, it has similar characteristics. It's just that all the changes is to accommodate a different type of buyer, is to accommodate somebody who may have purchased a Ford in the past, a Chevrolet, a Toyota. And I don't necessarily think any of this is a bad thing. I don't want that to come across that way, because I think Mazda is going to sell tons of these. I think Mazda is going to have one of the best years for CX-5 sales for this generation. It's just that everything that traditional Mazda buyers liked about the CX-5 seems to be gone. And maybe that's done on purpose, where there is no overlapping with the CX-50. That if you want a rugged vehicle, you want a crossover that feels a bit sporty, agile, and a bit more on edge, you go in the CX-50 direction. Whereas the CX-5 has always been the comfortable daily driver, the smaller daily driver, the crossover that you would buy for its luxurious attributes. And they've retained that. They've retained all of that here with this new generation CX-5. And now it's somewhat polar opposite of its siblings. So you don't have to be confused here now. If you want a comfortable daily drive, you want a more laid-back driving experience with modern technology, larger infotainment system, you also want creature comforts and amenities coming in at a lower price than some rivals. You have that with the CX-5. But one thing I am going to say though here with this vehicle is that you don't have to go with the Premium Plus. I think there's a lot of value out of the Preferred right now for the 2026 model or even the Premium. And it just comes down to the extra add-ons, the extra features with the Premium Plus at around $40,000, where it becomes one of these luxurious and upscale daily drivers. But I think with a Premium Plus or a Preferred, you're going to get a great bang for your buck. And that would be the direction I would go in here for this new generation. But So far with the Premium Plus, I have been pretty impressed. And again, it comes back to the intangibles, more importantly. What did Mazda not do great last generation? And that was size. That was practicality. That was technology. That was having a vehicle that felt modern. And they've addressed all of that and then some. It's just that for this generation now, to meet those demands, to attract those type of buyers, they've had to turn down the dial a bit on the performance. They had to turn down the dial a bit on the fit and finish to give you a vehicle at $40,000 that feels competitive, that is competitive on paper, and also still gives you the refinement for the on-road driving experience that you've associated with the Mazda brand for many years. So guys, let me know what you think here about the 2026 Mazda CX-5. Is this now the compact crossover to beat at around $40,000? That new technology, the upscale styling, the upsizing of this vehicle makes it more appealing. But let me know what you think. Guys, once again, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.